האם זה באמת סגולה בדוקה? הסגולה ללמוד בזה?
Erev Tov, good evening. Dobro V'Yetcher. We are in the Zera Shimshon on Parshas Devarim, and we're going to do Os Beis, section 2. Before we begin, let's take a look at a pasuk from our parsha. This is right in towards the beginning of the parsha of Parshas Devarim, Perak Aleph, pasuk Yud. Hashem Elokeichem hirbo eschem. This is Moshe talking to Bnei Yisrael. Hashem, your God, has multiplied you. V'hinchem hayom, and behold, today you are kecholchavei hashamayim lorov, like the stars of the heaven for abundance. So Hashem tells the people that Hashem has multiplied them tremendously, and at this point they are a tremendous nation, like that can be compared to the stars in the heaven. Now, it's important to know, what does Moshe mean when he says this day? So about 10 psukim before this, in the first, right in the beginning of the parsha, it tells us that this was the first day of the 11th month, which is Shvat, in the 40th year after Bnei Yisrael left Mitzrayim. Okay, so keep that in mind for later. We're talking about the 40th year after leaving Mitzrayim. So the Jews are camped along the side of the Jordan River and the Arvos Moab, the plains of Moab, and Moshe is talking to them, and everything we'll see later on that's relevant to the entire situation. Let's get right into the Zera Shimshon. Os Beis, section 2. Medrash Rabbah. Zera Shimshon starts with an excerpt from the Medrash Rabbah. Al pasuk, on the pasuk that we just read, Hashem Elokeichem hirbo eschem. Hashem, your God, has multiplied you. Zeh she'omar hakosuv. This is what the pasuk in Tehillim refers to when it says, Eshtachaveh El heichal kod shecha b'yirasecha. I will bow down to your holy sanctuary in awe of you. Ad kan Lashono, until here is the quote from the excerpt of the Medrash Rabbah. Vihu tema. And the Zera Shimshon says, this is hard to understand. Now, let's look back for a moment, because when the Zera Shimshon, that's kind of a massive understatement. This is hard to understand. It seems completely incomprehensible. Let's put the two statements together. The Medrash Rabbah quotes the pasuk from our parsha in which Moshe says, Hashem Elokeichem hirbo eschem. Hashem, your God, has multiplied you. And the Medrash Rabbah says, oh yes, that idea that Hashem has multiplied the Jewish people is reflected in a pasuk in Tehillim, where David HaMelech says, Eshtachaveh el heichel kodshecha b'yirasecha. I will bow down to your holy sanctuary in awe of you. There seems to be absolutely no connection whatsoever between these two psukim, between the idea that Hashem multiplied the Jewish people and the fact that David HaMelech talked about bowing down to Hashem, to Hashem in the holy in his holy sanctuary in awe. What's the connection? It's almost as if we would think there's a misprint. Like, wait a minute, this somehow this pasuk from Tehillim was meant to go along with a different pasuk in the Torah, not this pasuk, because there's no connection. But the Zera Shimshon, in his way, just says v'hu tema. It's hard to understand, and perhaps he's not making a big deal about the problem because he already knows that he's going to explain it to us, of course, as the piece continues. Next paragraph. V'yuvan, and this can be understood, b'mai de'isa b'medrash, with what is stated in another medrash. This medrash is from Bereshis Rabbah. It's commenting on a pasuk in Bereshis when Avraham and Yitzchak are on their way to the Akedah, to the binding of Yitzchak, and Avraham stops. They see the place where it's going to happen, and he stops and tells his servants the following. Al pasuk, on the pasuk, v'nishtachaveh v'noshuva aleichem. And we will bow down and return to you. So Abraham says to the two servants that are with him, stay here Shavu, stay here with the chamor, with the donkey, and the Yitzchak and I, my son and I, will go on, and we will bow down to Hashem, and we will return to you. That's the pasuk that's being commented upon. Omar Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak said, Hakol bizuchus hishtachavoya. Everything is in the merit of bowing down. And this word ishtachavaya doesn't just mean bowing like when we bow in Shmona Esrei and we bend our head forward and bend our back a little bit. This ishtachavaya is talking about bowing to the ground. Sometimes it's referred to as prostrating ourselves, lying down, bowing down all the way to the ground. And that's what we mean here and throughout the piece. Avraham lo chozar mehar ha-Moriah. Avraham did not merit returning from Mount Moriah, meaning with Yitzchak, his son, still alive, ela b'zchus hishtachavoya, except in the merit of this bowing down that they did. V'nishtachaveh, and it's reflected in the pasuk. And we will bow down, v'noshiva alechem, and we will return to you. So Rabbi Yitzchak in the Medrash Rabbah Bereshis is pointing out to us that when Avraham used these words, he was choosing his words extremely carefully. We will bow down and we will return to you. And Rabbi Yitzchak says it is precisely because Avraham and Yitzchak bowed down to Hashem that they were able to together return to these two servants. And Yitzchak was still alive, obviously, when they came back from Har HaMoriah. Continuing, Rabbi Yitzchak continues, Yisrael lo nig'alu ela b'zuchus hishtachavoya. The Jewish people were not redeemed from Egypt, from slavery, from bondage, except in the merit of bowing down. Dichsiv, as the pasuk says, Vaya'amein ha'am, and the people believed, v'chule, etc., vayikdu, vayishtachavu, and they bowed their heads and prostrated themselves. They bowed their heads first, and then they got all the way down to bow to the ground. That pasuk comes from when Moshe and Aharon first came to Mitzrayim. Moshe had received his mission from Hashem at the sneh, at the burning bush. And then Aharon came to find him, and they met up, and then they came to Mitzrayim. And when they first got there, they gathered the elders. They told the people, we are here. Hashem has sent us to save you and to rescue you. And the pasuk says the people believed them and bowed down. So Rabbi Yitzchak says it's not a coincidence that they bowed down. It's not just a side point. Because they bowed down, that is why the later geula, the later redemption came. That's how important hishtachavoya, bowing down, is. HaTorah lo nitna ela b'zchus hishtachavoya. Rabbi Yitzchak continues, the Torah itself wasn't given to the people except in the merit of bowing down. Shenemar, as a pasuk says, v'hishtachavissem merachok, and you will bow down from afar. This pasuk is from Parshas Mishpatim, and it's talking about after the Torah has already related previously in Parshas Yisro, the Jewish people coming to Har Sinai and the giving of the Torah. Afterwards, in Parshas Mishpatim, the Torah kind of has a flashback. It goes back to talk more about the receiving of the Torah at Har Sinai, and it says these words. Hashem says actually to Moshe, who will be, it says, with Aaron and with the Zekanim, you will bow down from afar. So again, we have bowing down, and the Rebbe Yitzchak says that's what led up to the merit of the Jewish people receiving the Torah. And he continues, Hagoluyos enom miskansos. The Jews in exile will not be gathered together and redeemed, ela b'zchus hishtachavoya, except in the merit of bowing down. Shenemar, as a pasuk in Yeshaya says, Yitoka b'shofar gadol, a great shofar will be sounded, v'chule, etc., v'hishtachavu l'Hashem behar hakodesh, and they will bow down to Hashem on the holy mountain. So Rabbi Yitzchak is telling us Why is Hashem going to redeem the Jews from around the world, from the exile in all corners of the earth, and bring them back to Eretz Yisrael and redeem them? Because when they get there, they will bow down to Hashem on his holy mountain in Yerushalayim, and that's hishtachavoya. Again, the bowing down plays a central role. Continuing, Beis HaMikdash lo nivneh, and the Beis HaMikdash won't be built ela b'zchus hishtachavoya, except in the merit of bowing down. Shene'amar, as the pasuk in Tehillim says, Romamu Hashem Elokeinu v'hishtachavu lahadom raglov, are the words that are missing here from the quote. Exalt Hashem our God and bow down to his footstool. The footstool is Hashem's footstool is a reference to the Beis HaMikdash, to the temple in Yerushalayim. So again, the Beis HaMikdash being built is talked about in connection to bowing down to Hashem. Continuing, Hamesim, and the dead, top of the next column, Einom Chayim, will not be resuscitated. Techias Hamesim, the resuscitation of the dead, the bringing back to life of those who have died in the past millennia, will not happen ela b'zchus hishtachavoya, except in the merit of bowing down. Shene'amar, as the pasuk says, bo'u nishtachaveh v'nichra'ah. Come, we will bow down and we will prostrate ourselves to the ground. V'nivracha lifnei Hashem osenu are the words missing from this quote. And we will kneel down in front of Hashem, our maker. And the interpretation is, what does it mean, our maker? In that pasuk, it means the one who makes us over again, who makes us again and creates it, puts our bodies and neshamas back together in the time of Techias HaMesim. Ad kan Lashono, until here is a quote from this amazing Medrash Rabbah on Bereshis. So let's pause here for a moment. The Zera Shimshon, as we know he often does, is giving us building blocks so that once he develops the ideas and the concepts that he wants to articulate for us, then he will see how the question in the beginning is going to be answered. So here he has brought us a teaching of Rabbi Yitzchak in the Medrash Rabbah on Bereshis, which focuses on the incredible importance of bowing down to the ground in submission in front of Hashem, and how that action can lead, has led, and will lead to all kinds of incredibly important and vital occurrences. The survival of Yitzchak and his return with his father Avraham was based on their bowing down. The redemption of the Jewish people from Mitzrayim, the receiving of the Torah, the gathering in of the exiles of the Jewish people, the building of the Beis HaMikdash, Techias HaMesim, all of these miraculous, incredible, earth-shattering major world events, the Rabbi Yitzchak teaches us, only happen because of a bowing down, a connection to bowing down and showing complete submission to Hashem. Now let us continue. Umatzinu behagoa shulchan aruch, we find in a comment made by Rabbi Moshe Isserlis, the Ramah, in the Shulchan Aruch, in the Code of Jewish Law, or Achayim Siman Kuf Lamed Aleph, in the first section of the Code of Jewish Law, the Shulchan Aruch, in chapter 131, we find the following quote: Osor l'chol adam, it is forbidden for every person, lipol al pneihem, to fall on their faces, bifishut yadayim v'raglayim, and spreading out their hands and feet. That means it's forbidden to completely lie down, face down on the ground, and spread out your arms and legs so that you're flat on the ground. Afilu im ein sham even maskis, even if you are not on a stone floor, v'chule, etc. A word of explanation is necessary here. This section in Shulchan Aruch, one of the topics it deals with is saying tachanun, which we call nefilas apayim. We call falling on our face. Of course, when we say tachanun, we don't actually lie down on the ground. And the Ramah tells us, make sure that you bend over and you bow over and we rest our head on our arm, but don't bow down, don't lie down and stretch out on the ground. Perhaps you're feeling that you need to do such tshuva and show such submission that maybe you feel that's appropriate. The Ramah says, no, never bow down and lie down on the ground in front of Hashem, even if it's not with a stone floor. If it is with a stone floor, just as an aside, then that is actually an Isser de Oraisa, a Torah prohibition. If there's no stone floor there, it's rabbinically prohibited, and that's what the Ramah is telling us, that this is not something lying down on the ground and flat on the ground and stretching ourselves out that way in front of Hashem is no longer appropriate. What do I mean no longer? We'll see as we continue. The Chosav HaSifsei Chohen, the commentary of the Sifsei Chohen wrote, for Parshas Mishpatim, in his commentary on Parshas Mishpatim, She'ikar ha'hishtachavoya, the main idea behind bowing to the ground completely and prostrating oneself, hi l'shem ha'miyuchad. It is for the purpose of showing submission to the four-letter name of Hashem, the Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey, which is the name of Hashem that is so holy that we never pronounce it under any circumstances. We never pronounce it the way it's written. And this type of bowing down in honor of the four-letter name and submission when hearing the four-letter name of Hashem, it took place historically in Yerushalayim, in the temple, in the Beis HaMikdash. And now, she'ein lanu Beis HaMikdash, when we no longer have the Beis HaMikdash, v'anu mazkirim es Hashem b'kinuyo, and we mention Hashem's name with a substitute name. When we see a Yud, a Hey, a Vav, and a Hey, that four-letter name of Hashem in the Torah, we never pronounce it the way it's written. We say we pronounce it as if it was written with an Aleph, a Daled, a Nun, and a Yud, which sounds a little bit like Ado Shem. I'm not saying the actual word because I'm not making a bracha or davening or reading a pasuk in the Torah. But hopefully you get the idea. We don't pronounce the four-letter name of Hashem. We say a different word in its place. Therefore, ein anu osim ishtachavoya, that's why the Ramah taught us in Shulchan Aruch that we do not bow down to the ground and stretch out on the ground. Ad kan Lashono, until here is a quote from the Ramah and the Sifsei Kohen. So what do we see here? We see here that the idea of bowing to the ground is one which happened before the Beis HaMikdash was built in different circumstances, and we know it will happen in the future in certain circumstances, but once the Beis HaMikdash was built, that was the only place where one was allowed to bow down in that manner to the ground, face down on the ground, and that was done in the Beis HaMikdash because that's where the Shem HaMeyuchad was used. The special four-letter name of Hashem was actually pronounced, but we no longer do that, and therefore we don't bow down to the ground. But it's showing us the connection between this bowing down and it being restricted to the Beis HaMikdash. Continuing, V'od matzinu b'medrash Rabbah. We also find in another comment in the Medrash Rabbah, al pasuk, on the pasuk, Hashem Elokeichem here ba eschem. That's our pasuk. It should sound familiar. Hashem, your God, has increased you, v'chule, etc. Amar lahem. Moshe said to them, Hayom atem kochavim. Now today, the word Hayom today was used in that pasuk. Today you are like stars. Avole asid lavo, but in the future, larov. You will be larov, which literally means for in abundance. Atemasidim lihios domim lerabchem. But the Medrash interprets it to mean in the future you are destined to be similar to your master, to your Rav. Look back the one line before, instead of larov for abundance, the Medrash says, read it as if it understand that word as if it was written larav. You will be like your master, and that's a reference to Hashem. So Moshe was saying to Bnei Yisrael, as amazing as it sounds, now you are so multitudinous. Hashem has blessed you with such with so many, such an expansion that you're like the stars. But in the future, you won't just be like the stars. You actually can be compared. You will actually be able to be compared to Hashem. Ketzad, how is this possible? Ksiv, it's written in a pasuk, Ki Hashem Elokecha Eish Ochlahu. Hashem, your God, is a consuming fire. So Hashem is referred to metaphorically as a consuming fire. Uchsiv b'Yisrael asid lavo, and it's written in a pasuk about the Jewish people in the future, in future times. V'hoya or Yisrael le'esh, the light of the Jewish people will be like a fire. Ukidosho le'lehava, and its Holy One, meaning Hashem, will be like a flame. Ad kan leshono, until here is a quote from the Medrash. So here we have an absolutely incredible, almost impossible to understand idea that Moshe was telling Klal Yisrael, you're like the stars Hayom today, but in future times you'll be like Hashem, you'll resemble Hashem. And then we have the two psukim, the Medrash brings the psukim to say, Hashem is called an Eish Ochla, consuming fire, and La'asid Lavo, in future times, the Jewish people will be referred to as an Eish, and Hashem will be like a flame. So there's the comparison. We need to study more to understand what this refers to, what it means. Next paragraph. We've moved to the next page, column on the right. Ubevadai shehamedrash hazeh hirgish kusha b'pasuk zeh. Certainly, this medrash felt a problem in the pasuk. Dehoyelo lomar, because the pasuk should have said, "V'hinchem hayom kechochve hashamayim," and behold, you are today like the stars of the sky. V'sulo, and no more, meaning it didn't have to say the word larov. Let's think about that for a moment. Behold, Moshe says, behold, today you are like the stars in the sky. Well, obviously, there are millions of stars. And so it was clear that Hashem is saying, you are millions of people. And so we understand, without another word, we understand what Moshe was saying. Umahu larov. So why did the pasuk add the word larov? For abundance. We understand that Moshe was referring to the abundance and great population size of the Jewish people. So why does it say larov? Elavad tzarich lomar. But definitely you need to say, the Midrash is teaching us what you need to say is larov, to be similar. What does larov mean? It means in the future you will be similar to your master Hashem, which is the Holy One, blessed be He. So Zera Shimshon says that's why the pasuk knew that we couldn't just take the word laro for abundance at face value, and that's why the Medrash gave it this deeper interpretation, or this added interpretation of Moshe telling the people in the future, Lasid Lavo, you will be similar to Hashem. Avol mikol makom kosher, but nonetheless, there's still a problem. The lo shayach lomar zeha remez shel larov. It doesn't seem relevant to say this hint about the Jewish people being like their master, atem asidim b'chule, in the future, etc. You'll be like Hashem. Somoch levihinchem hayom, so close to the words of, and behold, today you are like the stars. Shaharei ba'osa hayom lo hayukach. On that day that Moshe was talking to them in the 40th year after leaving Mitzrayim, they were not at all like Hashem. They had not reached the spiritual level that it would be appropriate to say somehow the Jewish people are to compare them to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Under any circumstances, that we need to understand how a comparison like that can be made, but certainly not at that point. It doesn't seem like we should have said that. Next paragraph. V'yesh lomar, and we can say shedover yodua eitzel hamikubalim. It is a known thing with the among the Kabbalists, and here I just as an aside, I always try to make sure when the Zera Shimshon talks about Kabbalistic ideas to say quite honestly and sincerely that I do not know I'm not a student of Kabbalah. I haven't learned Kabbalah, and I don't understand these types of Kabbalistic ideas except on the most primitive basic level. So I will try and explain them in that way. So the Zera Shimshon says, with Mikubalim, with the Kabbalists, Shehariboy hu mitzad hakedusha. Riboy, multiplying, abundance, comes from the aspect of holiness. Vehamiut, and scarcity or smallness, hu mitzad haklipa. That comes from the side of the shell, which in Kabbalah, again, on the most basic level, klipa refers to the kohos hatuma, the powers of impurity. So abundance is a reflection of holiness, of sanctity, and scarcity is a reflection of klipa, of powers of impurity. And when there is abundance in something, who simon l'shlitas hakedusha, this is a sign of the dominance of holiness in this particular situation, ulevitol haklipa, and the nullification of the kohos hatuma, the powers of impurity. Ulefizeh, and according to this idea, pshat hakosav hukach, the understanding, the explanation of the pasuk that we've been talking about is as follows: Hashem Elokeichem hirbo eschem. Hashem, your God, has multiplied you. Dahainu, this means, Kabbalistically, shehirchik mikem achizas hachitzonim. Hashem has distanced you from the grasp of the chitzonim, of the external powers, meaning the powers of impurity, the klipa, the kohos hatuma. Hashem, what would Moshe mean when he said Hashem has multiplied you? Meaning he has distanced you. He's made you, he's given you the blessing and the merit, the zechus of being far away from the kohos hatuma, the powers of impurity. V'zeh goram shahayom atem kachochovim bilvad. And this blessing and this merit for you, the Jewish people today, has already made you like the stars. That's why you've grown and expanded your population. You're such a huge nation now. Lefisha adayin lo higia hazman, but you're only like the stars at this point, because the time has not yet come, sheyisbatlu legamre haklipos min haolam, when the shells and which represent the powers of impurity will be completely nullified from the world. Aval o tihiyu larov, but in the future you will become like your master. Leosid lovo. In the future, kishetis batel haklipos legamre, when the powers of impurity will be completely nullified, tihiyu domim l'rabchem, you will be similar to your master, to Hashem. So now the Zera Shimshon is filling in our understanding of the pasuk in a very deep, new way, and that is that Moshe wasn't just referring to the numbers of people when he said you're like the stars. Moshe was referring to their spiritual level. You might say he wasn't just talking about quantity, he was talking about quality. And he was saying, at this point, you're a great nation in number, and you're also a great nation in terms of your spirituality. The Jews had received the Torah, of course, many years before. And so Hashem was saying, you're like the stars in quality, in quantity and quality. But in the future, you're going to reach an incredibly higher level of greatness. And then you will be not like just like the stars, but you'll be Larov, you'll be like your master. It'll be possible to compare you to Hashem. Next paragraph. Ume'ata hamedrash hanizkar le'el hirgish kusha. And now we can say that the medrash, which was previously mentioned, was sensitive to a certain question. Kusha gedola, a major question al pasuk, on the pasuk, Hashem Elokeichem hirbo eschem. Hashem, your God, has multiplied you. Shehalo lischus lemala kazo. Is it not true that to merit such a level, hayu min haro'oi sheyu Yisrael tzadikim gemurim, the Jews would need to be complete tzaddikim, completely righteous. The whole nation should have been or would be expected to be tzaddikim gemurim, completely righteous, to reach such a high level. At that time, they certainly were not on the level of tzaddikim gemurim. The Zera Shimshon says we can't refer to Bnei Yisrael at that time, the 40th year after leaving Mitzrayim, as being completely tzaddikim gemurim, completely full of only totally, absolutely righteous individuals. She'adarabba, because on the contrary, hayu tarchonim umiragnim, they were troublesome and argumentative. Shekodim zeh, right before this pasuk about the Jewish people being like stars, Amar, Moshe said, Lo uchal levadi se'eseschem. I am not able by myself to carry you, meaning the people caused a lot of problems. Va'achar zeh, and after this pasuk, the next pasuk afterwards says, Eicha esa, how can I carry levadi by myself, tarchachem umasa'achem, your troubles and your burdens. So clearly, the people, as great as they were, as high a spiritual level as they reached, they were not tzaddikim gemurim. There were still things they complained about. There were still problems. There were still troubles and things that Moshe felt like he couldn't handle himself. And so we see that there's a problem. Their level didn't seem to match what Moshe said to them. The Isa b'medrash, as it states in the medrash of Yalkut Shimoni, v'ayin l'komon b'samach, and you can look, and the Zera Shimshon says, and look in my next section of section 3, and you'll see more about this. V'im kain, and if so, if the people were still so problematic, eich evshar sheyizku lariboy hazeh, how did they merit this tremendous expansion? Tahainu shehaklipa tisrachek mehem, that the powers of impurity, the shells of impurity, would be distanced from them. V'yiyu nidbakim b'kedusha, and they would be clinging tightly and closely to holiness. Ima'asehem mochichim alehem, if their own actions prove about them, lehefech, the opposite. So the Zera Shimshon says the medrash that we started with in the very beginning, the very first excerpt of Medrash Rabbah that we started with, realized that there was a real question inside of this pasuk when Moshe says such amazing compliments, pays such amazing compliments to Klal Yisrael, Bnei Yisrael, and says, you're like the stars, and not only like the stars, but you're going to be even compared to Hashem. Wait a minute, the people were not tzaddikim gemurim. They were still causing a lot of problems. Next paragraph. Elavadai tzorach lomar. But what we need to say is, shezeh haschus shel hariboy, the merit that the people had of expansion, and we mean both, as Zera Shimshon has shown us, we mean both the quantitative expansion of starting off as a small people, starting off as just a family and growing to a massive nation of millions, and also the qualitative expansion of becoming, of reaching such a high level spiritually. Kvar zochu bo machmas ha'hishtachavoyo she'osu b'Sinai, that already came to the people through the bowing down that they did at Har Sinai. We're coming back to the centrality of hishtachavoya, of bowing down and submitting ourselves to Hashem. Dichsiv hishtachavisa merachok, as the pasuk says, you will bow down from a distance. V'sod hahishtachavoya, and the secret power of this bowing down, hu levatel haklipa, it is to nullify the powers of impurity in the world. Ulahorid or makif, and to bring down the enveloping light, me olam la-olam, from world to world, ad sium arba olamos, until this enveloping light completely envelops the 4 worlds. These are Kabbalistic ideas when he talks about the enveloping light going from world to world and going through all 4 worlds. These are ideas that are beyond my ability to explain. But the point is that by bowing down and showing this complete submission to Hashem at Har Sinai, not only did Jewish people deserve to receive the Torah, but they deserve to attain tremendous powers to nullify the klipos, the impure powers in the world, and to bring Hashem's enveloping light down into this world in a very powerful way. V'noda, and it is known shahakadusha hipara v'rava. It is known that kedusha, true holiness, is fruitful and multiplies. When you have true holiness, it spreads. Hefech haklipa, which is the opposite of the klipa, the powers of impurity. De'el acher, because the alien god, which is mentioned in Parshas Kisisa, is taras. It is neutered, it is sterile, velo avid peirin, and it doesn't produce any fruit or any offspring. So when we get closer to Kedusha, when we lead our lives in ways that bring us closer to Kedusha, and we bring more and more Kedusha into our lives, then we can become stronger, more fruitful, and multiply, and bring not only children and holy actions and peiros into the world. However, God forbid if a person does not do that and they become closer to the pakochos atuma, then they will not be successful and growing and expanding and being fruitful and multiplying in this world. Umishum hachi, and because of this, keshechozer Avram mehar haMoriah, when Avraham returned from Har HaMoriah, Shesham Ksiv v'nishtacha v'nashuva aleichem, and over there, Avraham, we know, had said, and we will bow down and return to you. Nisbaser harba arbe azaracha. Avraham received the wonderful news. Hashem said to him, I am going to multiply your children and expand, and your children would grow into a great nation. Why did Avram receive that message right then after the Akedah? Because of the Hishtachavaya, because of the bowing down to the ground and showing complete submission to Hashem. Next paragraph. V'chein b'Yisrael amru perek testis Shabbos, and so too this idea applies to Bnei Yisrael in the Midbar. Shahar Sinai nikro Midbar Paran. One of the names to the area where Har Sinai was located is called Midbar Paran. The Midbar of Paran, Sheparu v'ravu. The word Paran, Chazal interpret as Paru v'ravu Yisrael alav. The Jewish people were fruitful and multiplied around Har Sinai. Uperish Rashi explains, Shekol echad nisabra ishto. Everyone's wife became pregnant, v'yolda zachar, and she gave birth to a son. Shebizchus ha'ishtachavoya, in the merit of the bowing down, zochu l'riboy banim, they merited to have a multitude of children. And that's reflects this idea of Kedusha, embracing Kedusha, accepting Kedusha, coming closer to Kedusha, brings riboy, brings an increase in both the physical sense and the spiritual sense. And even though after Har Sinai sinned, the Jewish people committed sins, of course, there's the Egel HaZohav and other later sins, bracha rishona lo zoza mimakoma. The original bracha that they received, that was initiated by the Hishtachavoya, the bowing down before Har Sinai, did not leave from its place. It stayed with them. Umishum hachi amar haMedrash, and that's why the Medrash said, now circling all the way back to the first paragraph, Hashem Elokeichem hirbo eschem, Hashem, your God, has multiplied you. Zehu she'amar hakosuv. This reflects what's is taught in the pasuk in Tehillim, Eshtachaveh el heichal kodshecha. I will bow down to your holy sanctuary, connecting the Medrash. This is, of course, the answer to the whole question we started with, the big question that we started with. The Medrash was connecting the two psukim to say, how is it that Moshe was telling the people, you've grown so much in quantity and quality, you've reached such tremendous size and population and tremendous kedusha, and the Medrash says that's all based on Eshtachave el heichal kodshecha, the idea that David HaMelech articulated in Tehillim, I will bow down to your holy sanctuary, because Hishtachavoya, this bowing down, is what leads to all of these great later consequences, positive consequences. Next paragraph. Uvazeh hakesher, and with this connection between these two things, the Medrash is able, we can use the Medrash to answer another question on this pasuk. Shahayu lo lomar, continuing to the top of the next page, because it should have said, the pasuk should have said, Eshtachavel behechel kodshecha. The pasuk in Tehillim says, I will bow down to your holy sanctuary. But shouldn't it have said, I will bow down in your holy sanctuary? Shaharei ha'eshtachavoya eino muteres, as we learned before, bowing down to the ground and stretching out is only permissible ela bebeis hamikdash davka. It's only permissible in the Beis Hamikdash. So why did David say, I will bow down to your holy sanctuary? He should have said, I will bow down in your holy sanctuary, where it's permissible. V'loma omar el heichal kodshecha. So why did he say to your holy sanctuary? Ela lefisha omar hakosov. However, because another pasuk says Hashem beheichal kodsho, Hashem is in His holy sanctuary. Upershu hamikubolim, and the Kabbalists explain Hashem eino sholem kabayochel ela beheichal kodsho. Hashem is not complete, as it were, in a manner of speaking, ela beheichal kodsho, except in His holy sanctuary, because when holiness is completely dominant, as in the Beis Hamikdash, oz nispatlu hachitzonim, then all powers of impurity are nullified, umishum hachi eshtachaveh. And that's why David HaMelech said, I will bow down. Dehainu achavein bihishtachavoyosi. He meant to say, when I bow down, I will have kavona, I will have in mind, sheyizbatlu hachitzonim, that the powers of impurity should be nullified. Kedei sheyiskayim tamid heichel kodshecha, in order that Hashem's, your holy sanctuary, should always exist. Shehatfila tiya el kiyum ha'heichal, because David HaMelech's prayers and our prayers should be davening for the existence and continued eternal existence of Hashem's sanctuary, and the merit of our hishtachavoya, our bowing down and completely submitting ourselves to the will of Hashem. Just as Zera Shimshon has taken us through and explained to us, elucidated for us such incredible concepts, but just as one quick added note, on Yom Kippur, people might be thinking, wait a minute, we do bow down to the ground. Many people have the custom to bow down to the ground during part of the Yom Kippur davening. However, that's permissible, as it actually says in Shulchan Aruch, the place where we quoted the Ramah from before. If you put something down so that you're not bowing down on the floor itself, but you're bowing down on something that separates between you and the floor. So some people put down paper towels, some people have a carpet that they put down. There are different things that you put down, but it's important, if you are going to follow that minhag on Yom Kippur of bowing down to the ground, even if you're not going to stretch out and lie flat with your arms and legs spread out, just bowing down to the ground to put something down so that it separates between you and the floor. Yasher koach for joining in the learning in the Zera Shimshon this week. God willing, we look forward to learning again in the Zera Shimshon together next week.